Hello, people. It's Ambassador again doing his thing as usual. I tell you guys, like, share, subscribe, comment. The intention is to build a critical mass for Africa, and I'll just be talking about these topics. 1, 2, 3 people talk about it. Hopefully, those 3 people talk to 3 people, and that's how we grow. So the intention is just to spark it, as usual. Tupac said he might not bring about the change, but his music might just spark the change. I'll be talking about Kwame Nkrumah today. He's one of those guys who I really love. But sadly, I feel like he came before his time and he didn't use the right approach. That might be a stretch for me to say he didn't use the right approach, but I say this to all African leaders. If you don't have a critical mass, trying to change your people is a suicide mission. So he falls in that same group, which I feel like he came too soon and was trying to bring about change without having a critical mass, and hence he was killed.
Do you think you can represent all of Africa?
Me represent Africa is too big for me. I'm only trying to throw out ideas. And so it's only the ideas and principles which I believe in, which I think will be the ultimate. Help the continent is what I'm trying to put forward. And if the ideas and principles which I put forward is taken by the great majority of the people, then I think I've done my duty.
After a coup, they said he died, but yeah, it also said he allegedly was killed. Okay, so first, I think Nkrumah came with a lot of bright ideas when you look at his manifesto, but his ideas were ahead of his time, and also his person became bigger than his ideas, so people were attacking his person but not focusing on the ideas. And that's what kind of kills Africa at times. When you listen to some of his speeches, and even the speech I was talking about recently is, I recall, like, I watched this documentary where they were talking about him and when they were about to build the African Union or the unitary African state. And the trap which was put was the French Africans were asking him like, Nkrumah, are you going to be the president of this unified state? And he said, no, it's not about who will be the president. He does not even think he wants to be the president. He just wants to bring the idea which will bring about that president, which I think was a great move because everybody was feeling like, okay, he's trying to get one African state so that he can be the president. But he dodged that bullet. But also, I think he was thinking really strategically because I feel like what killed the success of the one African state is the, should I call it, French Africa. Some people will say the French African leaders were the best. I'll call names because if we don't learn to point fingers and call out the BS for what some Africans are doing, we'll stay in that same trap. I feel what killed the success of Africa, and I stand corrected, in the comment section, some of those who master history can correct me. I think it was Houphouët Boigny and Sédar Senghor. Those are the names. They killed the success of Africa because when Nkrumah, people like Nkrumah and what's his name, Sankara were trying to build West Africa, which would have just, when they're talking about spreading that wind of change in Africa at the time, what stifled that dream was the French used Sédar Senghor and Houphouët Boigny to sabotage their plans and then somehow manage to break down the system they're trying to put in place. I don't want to go into so much detail. As I said, some of these things, we just point people in a certain directions. Those who know, and those who dig enough to find out some of those realities will get to understand what I'm saying. But I'll just point those names to say yes. For me, Sédar Senghor and Houphouët Boigny were the guys who kind of killed that dream because Sédar Senghor was l'Africain par excellence, quoi. He was a perfect African in the eyes of the French. The French had their assimilation system, which was to absorb the African and make them as French as possible. That was what they called Frenchify. And Sédar Senghor was a typical picture of that. He spoke le français à la parisienne. He was part of the French political elite. He encouraged other Africans. I think he was even teaching French to some French. He was a French philosopher kind of person. So because he was so into the system and other Africans were looking at him, I always say, like, for a guy who spoke about negritude, wrote all these beautiful poems and prose things about negritude, but had a French wife, I have some questions to that. I have no problem with those who get married to white people. I'm not with the, what's his name? Dr. Umar line will feel like Africans should not get married to other races. I am okay with that, but I just feel like when somebody was talking too much about negritude, he was so much French. Wilfred Bini, who started with the whole cooperative cocoa system, was had so many great ideas. When you trace the story, you realize at a certain point he felt threatened and then changed his trajectory, and then was working 100% with the French, and then somehow managed to sabotage the plans of people like Nkrumah and what's his name, Sankara in West Africa. So without going too much into my conspiracy theories and all the other stories around it, I just feel like Krumah was ahead of his time. Um, Also, for those of politicians or Africans of today, I think we need to read between the lines. Some of these things I'm just saying is just to give you heads up. I cannot go into all the details of what I know or what I have read, but I just feel like we should think about some of these things. Why most of our movements get sabotaged and betrayed, and fellow Africans who have their interests at stake with the system don't get to compromise certain movements. As I said, I cannot go into all the details, but those who pay attention to some of these things will know. As usual, Chebo Ambassador, I'm out.
Just my opinion.